Hey, welcome to Just Salvos Live. Today we're talking about a very serious issue here in Australia.
Yeah, we really are. I mean, it's gambling, but it's even more important than that. It's this insidious pokey machines that's really capturing a group of people and destroying their lives.
Well, as we just saw on the slide, Australia has 0.2% of the population and 20% of the world's pokies. We're going to be talking about this and a whole lot more with amazing anti-pokies campaigner and CEO of World Vision Australia, Tim Costello. It's all on Just Salvos Live right now. Tim Costello, thanks so much for joining us.
A pleasure.
Now, as you know, we talked recently with Nick Xenophon, who's so passionate about this issue, but we're wondering if you could help us recap. Let's look at some of the facts, some of the figures. There's been a Productivity Commission report out.
Well, most Australians would be shocked to hear that the Productivity Commission discovered that Australia has 20.4% of all the world's pokies. Now, we're 0.2% of the world's population. So how did we get 20.4% of all the world's pokies? They'd even be more shocked to realise that we have the hungriest, fastest pokies with the huge speed losses up to a couple of $1,000s an hour in most places. So we have a massive problem, and it's a problem that now is hurting everyone. So after heroin, the second greatest contributor to crime is pokies. So it's not as if there's just a few sad individuals and you know, they're stupid, addicted. This is now having a ripple effect in our community.
So how many people are we talking? How many people are we talking, and how much are they losing? How much of this is affecting?
Well, addicted, it's over 100,000 Australians. They have no free choice. So when the gambling industry says, well, no one's forced to gamble, here are the gambling industry with the pokies preying on people who have no free choice. Another 300,000, the Productivity Commission says, are at risk, serious risk of addiction. So 400,000 Australians. But it gets worse. Those 400,000 Australians impact on 5 to 10 others each. So that's up to 4 million Australians directly impacted, which is why everyone has a story.
And who are those people that are impacted?
Well, it's increasingly women. So before pokies were introduced here in 1991 in Victoria, my state, there was only men that basically went to TABs and race courses. Once pokies were introduced, a different culture, because where does a woman who's middle-aged go, where you can get dressed up, where someone brings you a coffee and opens the door for you and walks you to your car. And so men who were predominantly the problem, and women were only 7% of problem gamblers before pokies, now it's over 55% of problem gamblers are women. And guess who pays for the food on the table, does the shopping, pays the school bills, clothes the kids? It's women. So this is why the impact is so devastating.
Yeah, trickling down. It's crazy.
It certainly is. So we realise that the states have got a bit of a grip on this. They love the cash, and explain it, understandably so. So what do we do about that?
Well, we've had a remarkable election last year, a minority government kept in power by some independents. One of those independents was from Tasmania, Andrew Wilkie. And he said, if you want my vote to Julia Gillard and Tony Abbott, you have to promise to bring in what's called a compulsory pre-commitment card. So you can't play the pokies without sticking that card in. And it's called pre-commitments because before you can play, you set the losses you're prepared to live with. It might be $300 over this week. And once you've hit those losses, you're locked out from all machines, not just in that venue, but every machine in every pokies venue. And this is a written agreement between Andrew Wilkie, keeping the Gillard government in power. So the Gillard government have announced they're going to do this. And guess what? All hell has broken loose with the gaming industry and with state governments who are addicted to the easy revenue from pokies addicts just flowing in. Some 13-14% of state revenue comes from addicted people playing pokies.
That's insane. That's a huge amount. And so what are we going to do about that? I mean, how do we counteract that? How do we convince the states, the clubs, the whoever else is actually benefiting from this stuff, But they need to change their ways.
Well, you'll never convince the clubs because they're going to run and are running a mining tax style advertising campaign. $20 million they've set aside. In Australia, that's a huge amount of advertising to stop the Gillard government doing this and to bring it down.
Yeah.
And when you say to those clubs, but how can you live with yourself knowing that over 50 cents in every dollar going through a machine comes from someone addicted who has no free choice? Just as you would say to the liquor or alcohol industry, you know, if you depended for 50% of your profits, your revenue, on alcoholics, they would say, well, that's immoral. Well, it's immoral with pokies. So they are running a massive campaign, which is why we actually need the voice of so many Australians to say, a pre-commitment card still allows me to play. It's a legal adult entertainment. I haven't lost my right. But of course, being able to set limits beforehand, because a pokies player, an addict, chases losses. They are only one win away from not having a problem. This is why you will never set your limits in the heat of play. And you find it so hard to walk away. We need Australians to speak up and say, we want this, to say to the Gillard government, you're doing the right thing, to support Andrew Wilkie, because we saw what happened with Kevin Rudd and the mining tax. That campaign literally brought a Prime Minister down. This campaign for needed pokies reform could bring a Prime Minister down again. That's what's at stake here.
Can I just, why would the general public not be on side with this? It seems logical. Why? What's stopping this general mass support for this compulsory pre-commitment?
Well, the industry tells lies. So the industry says, look, it's only 100,000 addicts, so 99% of the public play safely. What they don't tell you is only 30% of Australians ever play the pokies in a year. Of that 30%, it's only 15% playing regularly. And so the numbers addicted are actually a very high percentage of those playing. That's where the crime and the knock-on effects of fraud in business is all coming from. The 5 to 10 other Australians they affect. So this is why people are confused. They go, well, I don't really play. So when the industry says, oh, it's ruin, we're not going to be able to employ people. Well, let me give you a figure. For every $1 million spent on pokies, it creates one job. For every $1 million spent on retail, it creates 10 jobs, shopping. For every $1 million spent in restaurants and that area, it creates 20 jobs. Pokies are a massive job destroyer for the amount of money. So most Australians need to hear these facts, not hear the lies.
Wow. This is funny. It's one of those issues where I feel like the moral agenda and the justice agenda are actually going to marry together. I mean, it feels like there's a giant win here for everybody. So how do we mobilise the masses of Australia to get on side?
Well, I can see the excitement in your eyes. the
doesn't
sweet
happen often.
spot.
Well, it all just seems so obvious as well. Like, it all just seems
But you're right.
simple.
See, let's call it left and right wing in one sense. Right wing moral perspectives, particularly of churches, was if I win at gambling, my joy comes only because someone lost and they're sad. So how is that moral? The justice agenda says it's fascinating that most of the pokies are in the poorest postcodes in Australia. There are massive redistribution of money from the poorest people into the pockets of obscenely rich gaming industry giants and state governments. So justice and moral issues here come together.
That's, we want to talk a little bit about the way forward. Now, you've been at the forefront of this issue since before Crown Casino, since before the proliferation of pokies. No doubt you and others like you were making some big predictions then. I'd be interested to know, have those predictions come to fruition, and what do we do to move this thing forward?
Yeah, we certainly said that this is going to hurt Australian society. And when I started speaking out when Crown Casino was being built, I remember our main newspaper here in Melbourne, The Age, even editorialised against me. It said, go away, Tim Costello, you're a wowser, a killjoy. You know, they're legal in other countries, of course. Now, whether it's The Age or the Herald Sun, two papers here, we have won this debate. The latest vox pop taken by the Herald Sun, one of the papers, asking Victorians, do they support pokies? 85% said rip them all out.
Wow.
We have seen the ripple effect. We have seen the damage. So it's gone from, you're just a false prophet scaring us to, look
really
at this
see the
damage.
danger. Yeah. I mean, and that's really important for us to hear as well, because I think we will be sold this lie that actually we all want the pokies, and it's not true. I certainly know the music industry doesn't want them. A whole bunch of people who are affected by this industry don't want them.
So how do we wind it back then? We've just signed a new deal with new pokie arrangements. We've got Crown Casino still growing strong. How do we wind this monster back?
Yeah. Well, we've had a few victories here in Victoria. So New South Wales has 90,000 pokies, nearly 10% of all the world's pokies. We were to get 90,000 here in Victoria. Because we campaigned, that was capped at 30,000. So we started to have a win. Andrew Wilkie's deal, pre-commitment cards, is incredibly important because all the research shows with problem gamblers that they actually say, someone help me here. I know I'm out of control, and being able to set my losses is one of the best ways. So this is why speaking up now in support of compulsory pre-commitment cards is so important.
And it makes sense regulating addiction. We love to regulate addiction all the time. It's something the general public do. So this is something we're really saying, yes, actually this is one time we're saying yes, really.
Well, when the industry says, oh, this is a loss of our liberties, and a loss of, it's the nanny state. Well, it was the nanny state that said you've got to wear a seatbelt. It's a nanny state that actually says you have to have responsible service of alcohol, and publicans are fined if. I mean, this is just another extension of that idea.
Yeah, being responsible, and the state is responsible for us, I think.
We don't want to take up too much more of your time, but can you tell us, watching at home, what can we do now? We know the problems. We want to jump on board and help.
Right to Julia Gillard, the Prime Minister, saying you support the compulsory pre-commitments idea. Right to Andrew Wilkie saying the same. Let your state premiers know, because state premiers are really the problem here. They are amongst the biggest gambling addicts. The revenue is just so easy. They don't have to actually do anything unpopular like raise taxes. They just let more pokies into the poorest areas. Let your state premiers know that you support Julia Gillard and this pre-commitment of cards for pokies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
A pleasure. Great to be with you.
Incredibly challenging, certainly interesting. Tim Costello, what an absolute guru in Australian social policy, particularly around gambling. Jen, what can we do?
I think the really important thing that we need to do is to make it clear that we are actually on the side of these pre-commitment cards. I think it's really important that we send letters to both our members of parliament, to people who are influential in some way, to make it known that actually we are anti-pokie machines and that we really do care about people, and making just cards is not enough. They have to be compulsory pre-commitment cards.
And we actually have a draft letter that people can access.
We do. Those draft letters are going out right now. They're actually ways to show you who you need to write the letter to and what you need to include in your letter. You can get a copy of that from your division if you're in the Southern Territory. So please do that, and we want to see as many letters going to different people in Parliament as we can. It's really important that we get on side with this.
And if you want a copy of that letter, if you're not in the Salvation Army, you can always email us at JUSTSalvos, and the address is right there. Of course, you can jump on our Facebook, facebook.com/JUSTSalvos. We're going to be talking to Tim Costello again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to be telling us all about Indigenous issues and just where we are at in Australia.
And, we look forward to that. See you on Facebook. Catch you next week on JUSTSalvos Live.